Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first quarterback, Cooper Rush of the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush, he's been playing good football over the last few weeks for this Dallas Cowboy team. In Week 16, he's got a great matchup on paper versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So the last few weeks for Rush, Week 13 versus the Giants, 195 pass yards, a touchdown. Week 14 versus Cincinnati, 183 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 5 rush yards. In Week 15 at the Panthers, his best game of the season since he's filled in for Dak, 214 passing, 3 touchdowns, 5 rush yards, and a fumble loss. So him and CeeDee Lamb have been on the same page, making plays. Rico Dotto, 3 weeks in a row, over 100 yards on the ground, which has obviously opened up the pass game. And Cooper Rush, he's got an accurate football. He plays good game manager, but at times if he has to get out of the pocket and make plays, we've seen it, especially in last week's game at the Panthers, where he had a 3-touchdown performance. So right now, while Rush is playing good football and he's got a good matchup coming up, he's a good streaming option possibly in deeper leagues, and he's available in 92% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback, Russell Wilson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Russell Wilson, he's available in 51% of leagues. I know the numbers the last few weeks have dropped off a little bit here for Wilson, but I'm going off matchup and a potential high-scoring game at the Baltimore Ravens in Week 16. A big division matchup between these two teams. Week 13 for Wilson at Cincinnati, 414 passing, 3 touchdowns, an interception. Week 14 versus Cleveland, 158 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 rush yards. In Week 15, a tough loss at the Eagles, 128 pass yards, a touchdown, 13 rush yards, and a fumble loss. So this is a Saturday ball game here in week 16. This is going to be a good battle between these two teams. And the Ravens do give up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. I know going back to Week 11, he had a bad game versus defense was Russ. 205 with an interception in that one. But I believe with George Pickens possibly returning in this week's ball game, and it's a big one in the division here, I think Russ could bounce back and be a decent streaming option for fantasy owners. And he's available right now in 51% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback, Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, I recommended him as an ad last week out there, and he had a big ball game in an easy matchup at the Jacksonville Jaguars, where him and Devontae Adams definitely turned the clock back, where Adams went for 198, 2 touchdowns. So Rodgers, he's been playing better football over the last couple weeks. I know it's been easier matchups, but surprisingly still out there in 65% of leagues. So the last few weeks, Week 13 versus Seattle, 185 pass yards, 2 touchdown interception. Week 14 at Miami, 339 passing, a touchdown. And Week 15, the monster game, 289, 3 touchdowns, even 45 rush yards he added in a 2-point conversion. So Week 16, a good matchup versus the Rams. Give up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And he's locked in with Garrett Wilson, who found the end zone in Week 15's game, and locked in with Adams, who went off for the monster performance. So right now, while Rodgers is out there in tons of leagues, and this could be a potential high-scoring game between these two teams. He's an ad this week, and the final quarterback I looked at off the wire is Jameis Winston of the Cleveland Browns. I know Winston, he had a stinker last week versus the Kansas City Chiefs, so I'm going off matchup, and he's got a great matchup coming up here in Week 16 at the Bengals. I give up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So Jameis Winston, you know you're going to get monster games out of him, and games where he puts in a dud like he did in Week 15 versus the Chiefs for Winston. So the last few weeks for him, Week 13 at Denver, 497 passing, 4 touchdowns, 3 interception, 11 rush yards, a 2-point conversion. Week 14 in Pittsburgh, 212 passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 28 rush yards. In Week 15 versus the Chiefs, 146 pass yards, 3 interceptions in that ball game. So interceptions have always been a problem. We know he's had a 30 touchdown, 30 interception season in his career and a 5,000-yard season. So he's the ultimate gunslinger. He's going to take chances, and he's got great weapons, obviously. Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, I know he didn't play in the Week 15 game. We'll see if he comes back this week here. But Winston, he's got the big arm. He makes things happen one way or the other. And this week here in a potential high-scoring game, and the Bengals, like I said, can't stop anyone giving up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks on the season. I think Winston's a decent streaming option, and he's available in 67% of fantasy leagues. That's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.